to a lot of devotees this week speak so nicely about Krishna Katha. And so I humbly, I submit myself before you simply as just trying to read and follow instructions from the devotees that have instructed me to do so. And I hope I can say something nice to guide everyone on their mornings. Also, I'd like to mention before class that one of my good friends is receiving Harinama Diksha today from her Guru Maharaj. And so if we could all ask Shri Nitai Sachinandana to guide her, as certainly she will be, for the rest of her devotional life as she joins the ISKCON family now, Prabhupada's very large family. I think it would be our fortune to be able to offer prayers to such a nice devotee. Okay, so here we are with Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 8, text 31. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Prayers to Queen Kunti and Maharaj Parikshit saved. Gopiya dade tvai kritaga siddhamatavad yate dashashru kalinanjana sambhramaksham bhaktram niniya bhaya bhavana yastitasya samam vimohayati bhirapi yad viveti. Gopiya dade tvai kritaga siddhamatavad yate dashashru kalinanjana sambhramaksham bhaktram niniya bhaya bhavana yastitasya samam vimohayati bhirapi yad viveti. Gopi adade tvai kritaga siddhamatavad yate dashashru kalinanjana sambhramaksham bhaktram niniya bhaya bhavana yastitasya samam vimohayati bhirapi yad viveti. Would anyone like to repeat?
Gopya dade tui kritaga siddhamatavad yate dashashu kalinanjana sambhramaksham bhaktram viniya bhaya bhavanaya stitasya samam vimohayati bhirapi yad viveti.
Thank you, Prabhuji. The meter is tough on this one, but it sounds quite lovely. Would anyone else like to try? Okay. Gopi, the cowherd lady, Jashoda, Adade, took up.
May I try?
Yes, Prabhuji, please.
I have a special guest. He'll chant. Okay?
Okay.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Gopyada de tvaye. Gopyada de tvaye. Kritaga siddhamatavad. Kritaga siddhamatavad. Yate dashashru kalila. Yate dashashru kalila. Anjana sambhramaksham. Bhaktram Niniya Bhaya Bhavanaya Stitasya Samam Vimohayati Bhirapi Yad Vibheti.
Sorry to disturb you all. That was from Srila Prabhupada's. I thought that would enthuse you. That's from Srila Prabhupada's lecture in Sridhar Mayapur. Get a sense of chanting that beautiful verse that you're going to listen to.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. I didn't know that the verse could be broken up like that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm not a Sanskrit expert, but it's simply Srila.
Okay, so the word for word. Gopi, the cowherd lady. Jashoda. Adade, took up. Twai, on your. Kritagasi, creating disturbances by breaking the butter pot. Dama, rope. Davat, at that time. Ya, that which. Te, your. Dasha, situation. Ashrukalila, over flooded with tears. Anjana, ointment. Sambrama, perturbed. Aksham, eyes. Vaktram, face. Niniya, downwards. Bhaya bhavanaya, by thoughts of fear. Stitasya, of the situation. Sa, that. Mam, me. Vimohayati, bewilders. Bihyapi, even fear personified. Yat, whom. Bibheti, is afraid. Translation and purport given by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. My dear Krishna, Jashoda took up a rope to bind you when you committed an offense, and your perturbed eyes overflooded with tears, which washed the mascara from your eyes, and you were afraid, although fear personified is afraid of you. This sight is bewildering to me. Very beautiful verse. Purport. Here is another explanation of the bewilderment created by the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is the supreme in all circumstances, as already explained. Here is a specific example of the Lord's being the supreme and at the same time a plaything in the presence of his pure devotee. The Lord's pure devotee renders service unto the Lord out of unalloyed love only. And while discharging such devotional service, the pure devotee forgets the position of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord also accepts the loving service of his devotees, more relishably when the service is rendered spontaneously, out of pure affection, without anything of reverential admiration. Generally, the Lord is worshipped by the devotees in a reverential attitude, but the Lord is meticulously pleased when the devotee, out of pure affection and love, considers the Lord to be less important than himself. And this is himself as it's lowercase. The Lord's pastimes in the original abode of Goloka Vrindavana are exchanged in that spirit. The friends of Krishna consider him one of them. They do not consider him to be of reverential importance. The parents of the Lord, who are all pure devotees, consider him a child only. The Lord accepts the chastisements of the parents more cheerfully than the prayers of the Vedic hymns. Similarly, he accepts the reproaches of his fiancées more palatably than the Vedic hymns. When Lord Krishna was present in this material world to manifest his eternal pastimes of the transcendental realm of Goloka Vrindavana as an attraction for the people in general, he displayed a unique picture of subordination before his foster mother, Jashoda. The Lord, in his naturally childish, playful activities, used to spoil the stocked butter of Mother Jashoda by breaking the pots and distributing the contents to his friends and playmates, including the celebrated monkeys of Vrindavana, who took advantage of the Lord's munificence. Mother Jashoda saw this, and out of her pure love, she wanted to make a show of punishment for her transcendental child. She took a rope and threatened the Lord that she would tie him up, as is generally done in the ordinary household. Seeing the rope in the hands of Mother Jashoda, the Lord bowed down his head and began to weep, just like a child, and tears rolled down his cheeks, washing off the black ointment smeared about his beautiful eyes. This picture of the Lord is adored by Kunti Devi because she is conscious of the Lord's supreme position. He is feared often by fear personified, yet he is afraid of his mother, who wanted to punish him just in an ordinary manner. Kunti was conscious of the exalted position of Krishna, whereas Jashoda was not. Therefore, Jashoda's position was more exalted than Kunti's. Mother Jashoda got the Lord as her child, and the Lord made her forget altogether that her child was the Lord himself. If Mother Jashoda had been conscious of the exalted position of the Lord, she would certainly have hesitated to punish the Lord. But she was made to forget this situation because the Lord wanted to make a complete gesture of childishness before the affectionate Jashoda. This exchange of love between the mother and the son was performed in a natural way. And Kunti, remembering the scene, was bewildered, and she could do nothing but praise the transcendental filial love. Indirectly, Mother Jashoda is praised for her unique position of love, for she could control even the all-powerful Lord as her beloved child. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Gopi adade tvai kritagasi damatavad yate dashashru kalinanjana sambramaksham vaktram niniya bhaya bhavanaya stitasya sa mam vimohayati bhir apiyad bibheti. My dear Krishna, Jashoda took up a rope to bind you when you committed an offense, and your perturbed eyes overflooded with tears, which washed the mascara from your eyes, and you were afraid, though fear personified is afraid of you. This sight is bewildering to me. Jai, dear devotees. What a very beautiful verse in purport. So when I was looking back, I thought that it'd be nice to contextualize again, to locate ourselves within these prayers by Queen Kunti. I had never made the connection that Queen Kunti is the great grandmother of Parikshit Maharaj. I had never thought about that. In that Queen Kunti is the mother of the four Pandavas, and Arjuna and Subhadra Devi are the parents of Abhimanyu, and Abhimanyu is the Abhimanyu and Uttara are the parents of Parikshit Maharaj. And when this chapter began, Kunti Devi witnessed Krishna protect Uttara from the Brahmastra. So they say that usually the parent is strict on the child, and a little more lax is the grandparent. And more lax than that is the great-grandparent. I have personal experience of this, that my father is very strict with me. But my grandmother is so lax. In fact, I crashed a car once, and naturally my father, after being satisfied that I was okay, was upset that I did something careless in wrecking a car. And my grandmother said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You should get him another car. Just get him another car." Like, not even caring that it was quite a financial loss. And my great grandfather even more. So my great grandfather, I would dress very foolishly when I was growing up. At least I think it was foolish, not anyone else. But I thought, looking back, I would not dress like that now. And I asked my great grandfather, who was a devotee of Jesus Christ and very intelligent. He said, you should dress the way that you feel comfortable with, even though my great grandfather was the ambassador of Brazil. So he was very proper. He met presidents and would always wear a tie and always wear slacks. Even up to the time he was 102, he would always dress very nicely. But I was wearing torn clothing that was sewn together from various other pieces of clothing. But he would say, "You dress how you feel comfortable." So we also get this picture in our sampradaya that sometimes our spiritual master sometimes our spiritual master will give us a difficult instruction, and it seems like something that is beyond our capacity to perform. And so we naturally ask Srila Prabhupada, our grandfather spiritual master, for assistance. And Srila Prabhupada commented to this effect, though I can't remember where. So we can only imagine how kind Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is, because he gave many of his disciples the instruction to come to the West to preach. And he took this as his life's goal because his parents desired this. In fact, we credit Bhaktivinoda Thakur as the pioneer of the Krishna consciousness movement, or the program to bless Krishna consciousness to the Western countries. So I was unknown to Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta, but they were taxing their intelligence to find out ways to reach people like me that were born in families that eating meat was commonplace, or in a culture where drug use and fictitious kind of cinema watching is very commonplace. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who chanted 192 rounds of Mahamantra every day for until he chanted 1 billion rounds, 1 billion holy names, dedicated the rest of his life to finding people like me, finding people like us here in the West. In the Vedic literatures, it is said somewhere that simply by chanting the holy names 1 billion times, one attains liberation. So there's no question of the mood in which the holy name is said. Of course, we know that saying Krishna once purely, a person attains pure love of God. But this is saying mechanically, if a person chants 1 billion names of God, they attain liberation. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did this. He chanted 1 billion names, but then he stood up from that spot And then he spent the rest of his life telling his disciples to preach in English. He had already turned the Sajjana Toshani into the Harmonist, an English written magazine where he spoke about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement and Sri Krishna's movement. And that instruction was given to our very dear Srila Prabhupada, who took it as his life's mission. And at the very advanced age of 70 years old, Srila Prabhupada is actually still in the Jaladuta now. He will be landing next month in September, but he spent, if you can remember the day that we celebrated, right after Sri Balaram's appearance day, Srila Prabhupada boarded the Jaladuta, and he's still on. So if you think of how many days you've had to sleep on a comfortable bed and take a nice shower and eat nicely, Srila Prabhupada was on a boat this whole time and fasted until the captain decided to, get him a pot. He was just going to have cereals, so he could cook his grains. So this is the magnanimity and the munificence of grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents. So we can imagine Kunti Maharani's joy in seeing that her great-grandson was saved by Sri Krishna, the person who she adores as her worshipful deity. She has been telling us, she began by describing how Sri Krishna saved her and her family from a fire, from a poisoned cake, from cannibals, and how she was not at all upset at him for this because it brought her closer to devotion to him. She realized that actually Krishna taking away all of these material comforts was him favoring her and giving her an opportunity to love him more, because that's what the devotee wants. The devotee wants to advance. The devotee wants to please the spiritual master, but the spiritual master's mission requires that the devotee advance. And so it goes hand in hand, that the devotee desires to advance to serve the spiritual master, but also because it's natural. It's natural for the Anu Atma, for the Jiva, to take shelter in the Vibhu Atma, the Purushottama. It's a natural position, in the same way that the law of gravitation works naturally, that small things take shelter of bigger things. It's only natural that we, very small souls, find shelter at Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet. So she was grateful that Krishna was, in a sense, removing the obstacles between her attraction to him and her. And those obstacles are material comforts. So having a nice bed and having everyone around you, like your family, which Duryodhana was, like having them be very kind to you all the time, is actually an obstacle. And so she was very grateful that Sri Krishna was removing that obstacle. And she's responding after Krishna has saved Uttara and Parikshit Maharaj with this beautiful verse, that she's reflecting a little bit on this parental mood that Yashoda Devi has with Krishna. And she's of course referring to Damodar Leela. Let me see here, the verse. Dhamma Tavad. So took up a rope at that time to bind you. And so she's thinking of this pastime where this personality, Sri Krishna, that has just saved Uttara from an unsavable situation, right? Unless the warrior knows who released the weapon knows how to withdraw the weapon, there's really nothing that can be done. Though Krishna asked Arjuna to release a greater one to cover it, and then I believe that that's how it happened. He asked Arjuna to release his own, and then Krishna covered both of those up. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So Krishna has just saved Uttara and Parikshit Maharaj, and Kunti Maharani is reflecting on this pastime. Prabhupada says in the first line that here's another explanation of the bewilderment created by the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. What Kunti Maharani is bewildered by is that Sri Krishna terrifies fear personified, right? Kalosmi, I am time, the great destroyer of worlds, and save for you, Pandavas, everyone on this battlefield will be destroyed, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. And when Krishna shows Arjuna his universal form, it's nothing that you could ever imagine binding a rope around. He saw Brahma on that form, emerging from the lotus that was emerging from the belly of this great form. He saw razor sharp teeth that were taking in all of the demons and literally also everyone. He saw fire coming from the mouth, and he saw sharp swords, and we've seen the beautiful illustrations that the devotees have made. And this is simply a two-dimensional representation of what the universal form looked like. Arjuna was seeing something that was bewildering to him. And Arjuna thinks the same thing. He thinks that this is bewildering to me, and I'm sorry for having sat on the same bed with you and having laid on the same bed with you and calling you Saka, hey friend, hey Krishna. I'm sorry for calling you these names. You're Krishna. Friend is a small word for what I'm seeing now, Arjuna's thinking. And Kunti Maharani just saw that Krishna protected two living beings from a Brahmastra, which Srila Prabhupada described as modern day nuclear weapon. But she's remembering at the same time that Jashoda took a rope to bind this person. And not only that she bound him, that's a hard enough thing, but that he was crying. So he was afraid of a woman. He was afraid of his mother running after him, but he's not afraid now of a Brahmastra. And so how does this make sense, basically? But we know from our acharyas, particularly from Sri Jiva Goswami, that God is that person in whom all contradictions must be resolved. And so Sri Jiva Goswami is elaborating on an argument, rather a resolution to an argument that Sri Ramanujacharya has given against Sripad Shankaracharya. You may be knowing that it's commonplace for the impersonalists to remove attributes from Brahman. So they say that if you ever described Brahman, you would be bringing it down to the level of relativity. For example, if you say Brahman is good, then you're necessarily saying that Brahman is not bad. So you've limited it in some way. So you shouldn't even try to put any words to this Brahman, because by giving it attributes, you're actually limiting it. Even if you find a great attribute like amazing. Amazing exists only in the material world. So if I say amazing to you, dear devotees, you may have an example of what's amazing. you may have an example of somebody that can make $1 million is very amazing. Even more amazing than that is someone that makes $1 billion. So that means that somebody that makes less than $1 billion is not amazing anymore, and only someone who makes $1 trillion is amazing. And in that way, it's just very linear. You can always keep finding more. But Brahman is not amazing in the sense of there's nothing to compare it to. It's one without a second. So what would you ever compare Brahman to that you could say that Brahman is amazing? So the impersonalists say, better not. Don't give any words to it. But Ramanujacharya, genius as he is, and to our great fortune to save us from the very philosophical arguments of the impersonalists, says, actually, Brahman means that which is great. From the root, one root is brim, which means to expand. So it's always expanding, always greater. So Brahman is that which is the greatest. And he says, instead of removing attributes from Brahman, like we say that Brahman is not a man, or Brahman is not a woman, and Brahman is not black, Brahman is not white, Brahman is not good, Brahman is not bad. Why don't we instead give all of those attributes to Brahman? Why don't we say instead that Brahman is both good and bad, that Brahman is both black and white, Brahman is both man and woman? And the more and more attributes that we give to this Brahman, the more we will understand what Brahman really is. And Sri Jiva Goswami agrees. Sri Jiva Goswami says that Brahman, the God, is actually that being in whom all contradictions are resolved. So we see in Krishna's form, he's Shyam, that he's blackish, but Balaram is like milk. And so we see Krishna has described Balaram as he's his first expansion. He's the same supreme person, just with a different body. He just has a different dress, different external feature. So God in this example is both man, or he's both black and white. And I revealed what I'm going to say next, which is that in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described that Radha and Krishna are actually one soul in two different bodies, but that they have joined again in this person of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so God is also, we see, a man and a woman. Their lordships, Shri Shri Radha Madhava. And so you say Krishna is good because he speaks the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna and saves the world by doing so, but he also steals butter, which is bad. So he's both of those things at once. So that's what Brahman is. But those contradictions are still bewildering to the devotees sometimes, because sometimes the curtain of Yoga Maya is pulled in such a way that the devotee glimpses something for the purpose of Krishna's pleasure. There's a pastime in which Narada is walking with Krishna, and he begins to lament that so many devotees are being confused by your Mahamaya. And how is this possible? You know, like, I see you here now, and I know that these things are coming from you. You know, he's recalling the Chatur Shloki in Srimad Bhagavatam, that anything that you regard in the world that does not have a connection to me, you should know that's my Maya. And so Narada Muni, how is it that the devotees how is it that living beings can see something without relationship to you? And Krishna is just nodding, and, yeah, I know. And, you know, Krishna sees over there in the reflection something that catches his eyes. Narada follows the reflection and sees in the reflection, you know, a beautiful woman. He becomes very attracted to, and then, you know, he wants to do something nice for that woman, and they, you know, become married, and then have children, and then those children grow up, and then that they have to leave for the retired lifetime, and Narada opens his eyes again and sees that he lived an entire lifetime in a flash, just in a reflection of a water. And then he understands, and he understands Krishna's Maya in that moment. So it's just for Krishna's pleasure. Similarly, when Arjuna's Sakya Ras was disturbed temporarily when he saw the universal form, it was also to show us what is God really? What is God really? Just so that we don't accept, so we don't rubber stamp the term Bhagavan on any other pretender that's going to show up. Krishna's showing us what he's capable of doing. So Srila Prabhupada explains here that something about fear. He is feared often by fear personified. I was thinking, who's fear personified? And I was thinking Hiranyakashipu. Kamsa was fearful, but we get a better characterization of how terrifying Hiranyakashipu was than Kamsa. Kamsa just had like, Dvisha Sangha, or not Dvisha Sangha, Asura Sangha. He just had a lot of demon friends that he sent forth. He was fearful because he was a great associate of demons. But Hiranyakashipu was personally terrifying. And he was fear personified. The demigods left their residential palaces in the celestial planets to make room for him, to let him sit on the throne. There was no one that could challenge him. Hiranyakashipu was the greatest yogi this universe has ever seen. No one has achieved that kind of domination of the 3 planetary systems by practicing that kind of severe austerity. That Brahma himself was called down to give him a boon that had not been seen before. Actually, in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Srila Sanatana Goswami explains something very beautiful. He explains that the devotees became a little bit sullen or forlorn or a little bit disencouraged when they saw how powerful Hiranyakashipu had become. And a lot of materialists, even though he was a terrifying person, a lot of materialists were also very inspired of, look at what you could achieve by mystic yoga. Like, look at how much you can do. You can have darshan of Brahma. You can become the ruler of the planetary systems. And yeah, maybe he had an impure motive, but what if I just have a good motive and do something equally difficult? How amazing was Hiranyakashipu's position, really? And the devotees were a little I want to use the right word. They were a little bit disencouraged that how has a materialist become so powerful in this world? And so part of the reason why it's described, Srila Sanatana Goswami describes of why Sri Prahlad was given so much. Nrsimhadev is a very special incarnation of the Lord because he was not seen before. He was a special form of the Lord that came to protect Sri Prahlad. So what Sri Prahlad is saying, my Lord exists in everywhere inside the atom. He had not seen that form yet. That form appeared specifically to protect Sri Prahlad Maharaj. And so it is said that Krishna did this to instill confidence in his devotees again. That yes, there is a lot that happened for Nrsimhadev, but even more I will do for you. And so he gave Sri Prahlad everything that he gave him, including darshan of that beautiful form of Nrsimhadev, with his wasp-like, or with his stone-like claws, or his claws that were like wasps that ripped into the stone-like chest of Hiranyakashipu. He did that to reinvigorate hope in the devotees that even more I will do for you. Because some were thinking, look at how much is given to the materialists, And Sri Krishna showed, more I give to you, devotees. So look at how much I give you. That's simply by remembering. Simply by remembering, and even being born in the family of demons. Even having the worst lineage. You can't get greater, lower than Hiranyakashipu. There's no greater demon, which is to say there's no lower birth than to take birth from the greatest demon. But Sri Prahlad is very special to the devotees, because simply by remembering the Lord, simply by remembering him in all of his difficulties, he incurred the favor of the Lord. And so we remember Sri Prahlad when we remember the situation of Srila Haridas Thakur, the Namacharya. And we remember Srimati Kunti Devi also, that in all of her difficulty was simply remembering the Lord, but Sri Prahlad was perfect in that. But Hiranyakashipu was fear personified, but who was he afraid of? He was afraid of Nrsingadev. He was afraid of Nrsingadev. Nobody had challenged him like that. And Kshatriyas do like a challenge. They never leave a battle, because for them it's better to die on the battlefield than to live a life of shame outside. Hiranyakashipu was a Kshatriya, and so he wasn't, so afraid that he was going to go leave, but he had never seen a form like that. And though he did his level best, and Krishna was entertaining him for some hours, when it was evening time, he said, "Okay, Leela's up. Leela's up. It's time to go now, Hiranyakashipu. On to your next life." So this is who's being remembered. This is who was bound around the stomach, Damodara. This is who Damodara is. The person who terrified Hiranyakashipu cried because Mother Jashoda followed him. And this is who Srimati Kunti Maharani is remembering with great love, and also glorifying Jashoda Mai for having such an exalted position of love. So, dear devotees, I'd like to, if I could tie everything in a bow, something that I've been thinking of this week is the first offense against the holy name is to blaspheme or criticize the devotees that have dedicated their lives to spreading the holy names of the Lord. And if you are all knowing, I hope you can enlighten me, but I don't remember the devotee who wrote it, but I know that a devotee wrote the positive injunctions. For every offense, there is a positive injunction. And the first one I've been thinking of a lot, because one of my dear friends, I had the fortune of hearing him glorify many of his contemporary. And so the first positive injunction is to, instead of don't blaspheme the devotees, one should glorify them. So instead of having the mentality of wanting to criticize devotees for this fault and that fault, everyone who has chanted Hare Krishna, everyone who has offered obeisances in front of Srila Prabhupada and the deities is trying. And if they're chanting Hare Krishna, even while on their cell phone or whatever, they are chanting Hare Krishna. And so they are trying to meet their Lord again. And so we will be most fortunate if we can learn how to see their good qualities. And we can learn that from Srimati Kunti Maharani. Srila Prabhupada says here, indirectly, Mother Jashoda is praised for her unique position of love. Kunti Maharani is a pure devotee, but she is not spending time saying, Krishna, why did you put me in this situation? Look I'm clearly advanced. I've fasted on so many Ekadasi days, and I think about you so much. But instead, she's taking this opportunity to glorify another devotee. And I think that this is also what's so beautiful about Srimad Bhagavatam, is that Srila Prabhupada gave us an opportunity to glorify him by saying Jai Srila Prabhupada for his beautiful Bhaktivedanta purports. We're given an opportunity to glorify the devotees. Srimad Bhagavatam is described as it's a biography of saints and holy people. And so we're given an opportunity to glorify them every morning when we read it. every one of you that is awake right now at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, when we could all just be giving up for whatever reason in the world, we've woken up to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and I'm very grateful to be among you all today. And because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have had an opportunity to read Srila Prabhupada, and I wouldn't have been able to do what Krishna asked, which is just talk about Krishna, Bolo Krishna, Bhaja Krishna, Koro Krishna Shiksha. So thank you all. I'm sorry I spoke a little longer. If I'm grateful to my Guru Maharaj and to Srila Prabhupada and to Jai Sachinandana Prabhu for giving me the opportunity to do this, and to Narottam Das Prabhu. If there's any corrections to what I have said, please let me know. And if anyone knows the devotee that wrote the positive injunctions for the offenses against the holy name, please let me know. Hare Krishna.
Hey, Shabu, thank you so much. It's a beautiful class. You've put so many things. I early part especially how connected our grandparents and great grandparents love more than parents. How we connected this part here and made the connection with Kunti Maharani, being so happy that her grandson was saved by Krishna. And thank you, Prabhu. Yes, it's so beautifully viewed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Also, Prabhu, sorry. You're saying something, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, and thank you.
Yeah, hi Krishna. But also like how we never think, and I think now out of practice we just say Shri Prabhupada ki jai. But then you're glorifying how we're always glorifying Shri Prabhupada also, and he's given us an opportunity not to glorify just the Lord and his devotees, but also him. So thank you for bringing that out. So every time we say that, now we will tell it more like from heart and not just out of practice. So thank you for that.
Jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the wonderful class. You brought in so many references from different scriptures and different pastimes. I'm still trying to absorb them. Take me some time. Thank you for doing that and reminding us of all these wonderful pastimes. The place where you asked a question, if anybody remembers, who talked about taking a negative injunction and turning into positive injunction in recent time. That was written by His Holiness Satyanandan Maharaj, that every one of the 10 offenses can be turned around. You know, instead of criticizing devotees, glorifying the devotees. Instead of, like all, instead of writing a mundane interpretation of the chanting of the name, writing a spiritual interpretation of the chanting of the holy name, etc., etc. So that was from Satyananda Maharaj. That was Bhaktivinoda Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur originally also wrote that. But the most recent, since you asked for a recent devotee, he's the one who I've seen do it. I think it's in his Bhajan Rasya book, or it could be the Nectarian Ocean of the Holy Name.
Jai.
I was in preparation for this lecture, I was reading Srila Prabhupada's lecture from Los Angeles. Because it's interesting, these set of 29, 30, 31 all use the same word. This vimohayati, bewildering potency of Lord. So Srila Prabhupada kind of says something very wonderful in his LA lecture. He said the devotees who are outside Vrindavan they're studying the inhabitants of Vrindavan, how great they are. But the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they don't care to know how great is Krishna. That is the difference. Then he goes on, next paragraph. He says, so our business is simply to love Krishna. The more you love Krishna, the more you become perfect. It is not that it is necessary to understand Krishna. It is not that it is necessary to understand Krishna, how he is created. The things are mentioned here. Krishna is explaining himself in the Bhagavad Gita so much. And Srila Prabhupada, I highlighted this when I was reading this lecture. He said, don't bother very much to know Krishna. That is not possible. Simply increase your unalloyed love for Krishna. That is the perfection of life. Our tiny brains, how can we understand the inconceivable? But Srila Prabhupada is nicely mentioning that by understanding how the genuine devotees of the Lord and the most intimate, they're not so concerned about, tattva. It's kind of interesting. They don't have that huge interest in tattva. They're simply interested in serving Krishna. I was reading how Srila Prabhupada was saying that devotees that we're all janma karma chame divya, but here that's not so much given emphasis. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when I was speaking to our Gita group, there's always this question of Vishnu versus Krishna versus Narayan. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in Navadvip Bhavataranga, he says, as much as my Sri Krishna is endowed with utmost sweetness, Madhura, similarly the Lord of Vaikuntha, Narayan, is endowed with absolute opulence and grandeur, Aishwarya. Lord Krishna is Rajendra Nanda, the darling of the king of Braj, never gave up this opulence, but such aspects of his spiritual grandeur are considered unimportant by his pure devotees. So, Srila Prabhupada really nicely points out here how Kunti Maharani, like you said, is such is a relative, obviously, of Lord Krishna. But in the end, she's revering those that have love for Krishna. So genuinely, it's just like Devaki and Rohini, when after Krishna, killed Kamsa and they all reunited, and they were trying to glorify Mother Yashoda about her intimacy with Lord Krishna, and she was so wrapped in attention for Lord Krishna, she didn't even hear what they said. So, all goes to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Would anyone else like to speak some appreciation?
Hare Krishna. That was a very wonderful class, Prabhuji. It was very inspiring to hear about all the wonderful points you mentioned, especially about your upbringing and how you mentioned the love of your, in strictness, love of your father and of your grandparents. And later on, how you tied wonderfully the message of Mother Kunti, or the prayers of Mother Kunti. It was a difficult verse, and shared the wonderful aspect of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada, that lineage. That was very nice. So thank you very much.
Jai Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Would anyone else like to speak?